What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Variant the Podcast. As you can see, we have Tom, Comic Tom 101, back on the cast.
That's right. Welcome back, Tom.
Yo, it's good to be back. So much has happened.
So much has happened.
So much comics.
As we promised in our last podcast, Tom's back with another Hot 5, this one for December. And we are going to be rocking a whole bunch of stuff, right? Both me and Arris are in the dark this time.
For sure.
He's got the mystery list ready to go.
How hot is it this week, Tom? Is it super hot? Is it supernova?
Oh, it's scorching. This is going to be a really, really good list. There's a lot of affordable books on this list as well. And it's going to be a surprise why they're spiking.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Very nice. So we're going to dive into that up front. And then we're going to get back into the discussion about Bob Iger's, his talk at the book summit, his interview that we touched on last week that Arris surprised me with that almost made my head explode in the middle of an episode.
That is one of the most fun news breaks I've seen in a long time.
It is wild, but I've actually, since then, I've had a chance to go and watch the full interview, hear all of his comments, and I've got additional thoughts. We need to go back to this, and I want to clarify some comments that even we made last week about why we think Bob Iger, pawning off the blame on everybody was a little bit unfair.
No, he had nothing to do with it. He was gone for 11 months.
It's a little unfair.
He didn't acquire Marvel. He didn't acquire Star Wars and Lucasfilm. He didn't have to greenlight any of these things.
Those are all good things, though. Those actually aren't bad things.
Well,
we'll get into it.
What I'm saying is he didn't have to check off on any of it. As the CEO,
no.
as the CEO,
he was in the dark the last 3 or 4 years that he was at the company.
As the CEO of any company, you don't have to approve anything.
Right. He didn't greenlight anything.
Yeah, you don't get final say.
Yeah, he was tired.
Tom, do you get final say if you're the CEO of a company?
I think they have to abide by the shareholders.
Well, they certainly have to cater.
I love how literal he got with that one.
He's like, how can I answer this question without answering this question?
That's why I'm here.
All right, well, let's kick things off with the Hot 5. Let's do it.
Let's start off with some talks about our favorite serial killer in comic books, Cletus Cassidy. At the list at number 5, we have Amazing Spider-Man 361. This is the first appearance of Carnage, and I know you guys are big 90s fans. You know, as a 90s kid growing up on the animated show, I think it's safe to say that Venom and Carnage are some of the most memorable things to come out of the Spideyverse. So we have a full nostalgia swing happening because this book is actually really affordable. You can get it for under $100. And the recent Spider-Man 2 game featured a lot of Cletus Cassidy that reminded people about this book, which is, I think, partly why it's starting to sell more now than it has in recent past. But as of late, we're actually seeing the continuation of the Carnage narrative post the summer event during Rom V's run, where Carnage essentially becomes impenetrable, invulnerable, a god-like symbiote.
Yeah, no, that was a fantastic story arc, The Death of the Venomverse, which also introduced a lot of variants for the Venoms and symbiotes of the world, Symbiote 6, all that stuff. But yeah, it's kind of crazy how OP Carnage is becoming in Marvel Comics right now, as, again, he is quite literally a god, as you just said.
Well, Torrin Grunbeck has now been passed the baton, writing Carnage #1, art by Para Perez, and issue 1 of Carnage recently dropped, and I think that's the main reason why people are talking about Carnage so much, because he went in, because there's no host at this point, went into this run as a godlike entity, and it's trying to discover what it really is. And it's calling itself a god, but it's been hit with the conundrum that the thing that it must be lacking is someone to worship it, someone to pray to it. And the only person that he realizes that he's missing is Cletus Cassidy. And this right here is a great example of a comic book that you can read that is so mature, and it's low-key a little shocking that it's coming from Marvel and it's coming out right now. I highly recommend it, and as someone who loves horror, the horror genre, writing his own, first horror comic book, I'm getting some straight Saw vibes from this book. It ends in a way that's gonna just make you rethink, wow, this is a superhero comic book, a villain comic book. It's a must read.
So that's pretty dark for Marvel based on your description, because I haven't gotten into it. We our last touch on the Venom and Carnage storylines was the Death of the Venomverse story, which we covered back in October in its entirety. But that sounds like they stepped out even a little bit heavier, yeah?
Oh, absolutely. I don't want to get too far into it, but it's definitely something you're not going to read around your kids. But it's definitely a refreshing take on someone who is very lethal.
Is it going back to Carnage Mind Bomb era?
I was getting some Carnage Mind Bomb vibes indeed.
Nice.
Very cool.
I love how some comic books start selling, not because of what's happening on the screen or even necessarily for investment reasons. Sometimes it's just because the ongoing reads are just so good that it makes people want to take a look at various sites to pick up some cool key comic books. And that brings us to number 4 on our list with Amazing Spider-Man number 210, first appearance of Madam Web. What did you think about the recent trailer?
Oh boy.
Sony's going to be Sony. I mean, I don't think it's not shocking to say that the Sony films thus far have not been that great. You got Venom 1, you got Venom Let There Be Carnage, you got Morbius, which is widely considered to be one of the worst comic book adaptations or films ever. Craven and Madam Web both look like they're going to be on that path, in my opinion.
That was so calm and reserved. It was just very... No, I thought that the trailer was, to be frank, honestly, when the trailer dropped, I was like, they're still making this movie? I felt like the Grinch when the 2 old ladies show back up. He's like, you're still living? Because I genuinely had thought they had shelved the project.
They backrolled it?
Yeah, something like that. So when I saw the trailer, I was like, oh, well, let's see how this is. And yeah. Because Craven, I saw the Craven trailer, and the Craven trailer, I was like, okay, not the best, but it looks like it might have some fun moments. And then I was like, maybe it'll be in that vein, and then it wasn't. It was not impressive. And they're introducing several different characters from the Spider-Verse into what are we even calling it at this point? Because it's integrated with the MCU, but what are we even calling the Sony Spider?
I mean, it's not fully integrated yet. This is...
sort of.
Madam Web
with what they did with Venom specifically.
Yeah, but then they kind of ignored it. They went back. This film is being touted as this is going to crack open the multiverse. Madam Web will be, apparently, the movie and character that makes it all one, unifies it. That's like the big speculation.
That's fantastic. That's really exciting to hear. What did you think about it, Tom?
I think so far we can call it all just not good. That's probably the easiest way to just clean it all up. But, we have Dakota Johnson from 50 Shades of Grey portraying Madam Web, and this is more like a more modern take. But this book is selling aggressively, not because of how good the trailer is. I think it's actually having like the reverse effect. It's so bad that at this point, it's almost like a memification has started to take a stranglehold. And this isn't the only book that's spiking despite the trailer. We have Marvel Superhero Secret Wars number 7, first Julia Carpenter. Sydney Sweeney is going to portray her, and she's seen in trailer, sold the book, as did Amazing Fantasy number 1, first appearance of Araña Corazon. This right here is being portrayed by Isabel Merced, who's also going to be Hawkgirl in Superman Legacy. And we saw Amazing Spider-Man number 5, Maddie Franklin, Spider-Woman spiking as well. And that's being portrayed by Celeste O'Connor. All these books are selling well. And I think it's because it's so atrocious that people are checking on these books going, oh, the prices are going so down, but they're so cool of books that members are probably thinking now is probably the time to grab them.
That's interesting. Is Ezekiel's first appearance spiking at all?
That's also on my list, but I didn't even really want to bring it up because his character is kind of like a combination of 2 characters. So it's kind of tough to say if this is someone that people are going to care about long term, especially with how weird he looks. He kind of looks like a knockoff version of Spider-Man.
Right. Yeah.
He does. But oddly enough, it's nothing like he looks like in the book. Although you see glimpses in the trailer that he will have his comic book appearance, no shoes, that suit. No
shirts, no problem.
That suit, with no tie and stuff like that. But the suit does look cool, though. Again, nothing like it looks like in the books, but it's kind of like a cool spin on like an Amazing Spider-Man suit.
I'm just marveling at the fact that they've fully jumped the shark here, and they've gone so bad that they've reversed the polarity of the universe, and they've actually made themselves valuable by just how bad they actually are.
Valuable or at least sought out after, because these books aren't trending super high. Typically when a trailer hits, people get excited and then you see prices start to climb. No, these prices aren't climbing, but they're selling in high quantities.
Okay.
Interesting.
So maybe would you say spec? that they're hoping the movie hits and then they got it on the low?
Possibly. Or at least, really, really long-term spec.
That is
okay.
Listen, if you're specking that this movie is going to hit, that's a level of optimism that only Santa Claus can bring. You know what I'm talking about?
Let's not forget, there were times throughout this last 2 years, because this information has been out there that they were working on Madam Web, where they described this film as a, quote, thriller. It's supposed to be like a scary movie. This is, I got CW vibes from the trailer.
All day.
I was getting like, the CW, like even kind of like a Scream type vibe. But Scream is very kind of like tongue in cheek though, right? It's not like a serious like thriller slasher film. It's kind of supposed to be a little cheesy and stuff like that. So I don't think that's the vibe that that they're looking for, although that's what people are getting.
Well, let's keep the Sony discussion going because this kind of ties to it at number 3. I'm going to put Amazing Spider-Man 41 here, first appearance of Rhino. Yes, it's because of Kraven. But I also can give credit to Amazing Spider-Man Annual Number 1, first appearance of the Sinister Six. We're hearing a lot of rumors right now that was the answer to your question you posed. Like, what's with Morbius? Why is Aaron Taylor Johnson running around on all fours in the Kraven movie? What's going on with El Muerto? Why are they still making a Madam Web movie? There are talks that Secret Six may have been in the works this entire time to try to bring all of these anti-heroes together. Do you think it's gonna work? I mean, at this point, it all feels like a lost cause.
Well, I know for a fact that Tom Holland just announced that he will only return if the script for Spider-Man 4 is solid. So that tells me he's gauging the waters right now. He's in there. He's Spider-Man. He knows how things go and how things have been dipping lately. So he might be looking to go out on a high unless Marvel presents him with something very, very good. So if he's like, you're presenting me Spider-Man 4 with Sony Sinister Six, maybe not. So they're going to have to give him something good. And I that's been a rumor for a long time. And I think, Vulture appeared at the end of Morbius. So they clearly are setting up Sinister Six. It's just a matter of, will it be good? Because if it's not, Tom Holland will probably not be the Spider-Man to their Sinister Six.
I don't even know what to say to it all, honestly, at this point. It's just kind of like, okay. Sure.
It just all sounds bad. Yeah, that's what we can kind of
the only word that comes to my mind is just, why?
Well, that's going to bring me to a fun discussion here at number 2, because there is a series that is clearly building a universe that's going exceptionally well, and it's all superhero based. We got Boys number 1 at the list and number 2.
There we go.
So 3 very strong seasons out, an animation already out. We have a spin-off series, Gen V, which was fantastic, super high ratings. Season 4 is on its way, and this past couple weeks, we saw an announcement of Boys Mexico, a series that will be developed out of country in Spanish, continuing this universe. And I wanted to kick this to you guys as something that I've never really thought about being a variable we need to apply as it pertains to this market that we're discussing and that we're kind of poo-pooing in this very conversation. If we're able to see IPs go international, we have the potential of quadrupling an incalculable amount of the size of the fandom that there could be. And we're seeing it with things happening outside of Marvel. And if you take a look at the recent DC announcements with James Gunn, there's also talks of a Korean Huntress movie that is also getting very similar treatment. It will be in Korean, it will be produced out of country, and if James Gunn is already having the foresight, and then we're seeing over here on Amazon them doing the same, maybe Marvel's next step is to do something similar.
That's very interesting that they're like, you know what that tells me?
I know exactly where this is going.
Because you gotta because like everyone likes to tiptoe around these articles. Everyone likes to be like, oh, they said the message. Like clearly they're not talking about not putting messages in movies. Obviously a story's gonna have a message. Read between the lines, okay? Like if you don't know, then just freaking read a book. All right? Like what he's actually saying.
What?
No, because
read a book.
Just read it.
Like, because people were like, take it so literal, like you can't freaking understand what he's saying in business talk. And what that is in business talk is they're like almost kind of sort of giving up on the domestic market and like, hey, if you're not going to buy our stuff, maybe we'll go to some of the other countries and see if they'll give us money.
The true nature of a globalist.
Well, check this out, guys, because to kind of cement the point, over this last week, we saw Godzilla -1 hit the theaters. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm actually planning on going to see it tonight. And the budget for the movie, let this sink in, especially after our last conversation. I encourage everyone to go watch that video. We talked about the Marvels movie and how much it cost and how much of a loss it was going to take. These superhero movies are so expensive. They're putting so much money into these things. Godzilla -1 debuted in America at $11 million. $23 million its first month in Japan, which means it's $34 million right now globally. It just debuted on a budget of $15 million. These are two large of projects that are being handled here to be considered even mediocre at best. It's just not okay. We are being just pushed crap as it pertains to what could be for the amount of money that they're putting down.
No doubt. There's a massive conversation that needs to be had amongst the filmmaking community in the United States specifically, around the bloated budgets that have exploded over the last, I would say specifically over the last 10 years. It has just gotten so wildly out of hand. And from knowing some of the inside workings of Hollywood and how these budgets get formed, there is a serious reality to a lot of this money is going to places that they're not necessary for the creation of the film. It's a lot of pockets are getting filled because these franchises have gotten so large where they're making billions and billions of dollars. And, this kind of phenomena really exploded in the last decade. And, when there's that kind of money floating around anything, the piranha just show up. The vultures start circling, and that's exactly where we've gotten now. And it's resulted in what used to be this total rarity of like a $200 million budget film to where that's becoming the norm for a summer tentpole. $250 million. Nobody even bats an eye at it anymore. We're getting like the Marvels. They came in over $300 million. I mean, it's hard to wrap your head around these numbers. They get thrown around so much lately, but yeah, that's a big problem. And to see Godzilla, +1 do what they did and what they're likely going to do, as far as, going from a $15 million budget to, they're probably going to make easy quadruple.
Yeah, that's a big thing too, right? Like, it's not so much making $1 billion. It's like the ratio of what you spent, or and then the return you're going to get on that. Because, if you spend $15 million on a movie and the movie ends up making like $60 million, that's like the equivalent of spending $200 million on a movie and making like $800 million at the box office. You know what I mean?
There's everybody says, oh, well, if you want something that's really high quality, you've got to spend the money. And that's the point that I'm making, is that a lot of the dollars that are being spent in these budgets it's not necessary to achieve the level of quality. And the movie The Creator that just came out was a good example of what I'm talking about. They made that movie, the special visual effects of that movie are probably going to win an Academy Award. They were brilliant. And they made it for $80 million. It's just, it's not, there is a problem that needs to be addressed. So yeah, it doesn't have to do with any, but you're much more likely to be successful and have the returns that will allow you to make bigger and better projects in the future if you are more budget conscious and you're smart about the way that you make your projects. But anyway, yeah, I agree, Tom.
Well, then let's just move on to number one, because this next part is definitely not going to be controversial. No one's going to have their own opinions. I want to talk about Silver Surfer being cast as a female. I'm just kidding. I don't, actually. I want to talk about Silver Surfer being cast as not Norrin Rad. We have Fantastic Four number 48, first appearance of Silver Surfer at number 1. And the talk right now is that we're not going to get the classic Silver Surfer first. And there's a lot of people buying various Heralds of Galactus, and there's a bunch of them, and there's a bunch of books that we can discuss right now, but I just put Silver Surfer's first appearance here. How do you feel about not seeing Norrin Rad first?
Yeah, Arris, I feel like you're not here in the room, but I can just feel Arris's depression today. He just feels disgruntled. Like, there's just a heavy vibe going on over here on this side of the fence.
It's.
He's like, Tom's here. He's gonna give me some bad news. That's why I'm here, Arris. I gotta make him move a little bit.
They're just not having a good go at it right now. They are. Yeah.
It's like your kid lost the game or something. You're like, you just didn't have a good go at it. But next time,
I just don't I said it on our podcast last week because we touched on this. This has been the rumor. This female Silver Surfer rumor has been going on for months now. It's becoming more cemented as within the last few weeks with Anya Taylor-Joy apparently boarding Fantastic Four and apparently Silver Surfer, not confirmed yet. But yeah, I just don't know why you would bring, like, as a business, I'm like beating a dead horse here, but like as a company, you're like, hey, we have a character that'll probably make us a lot of money. Everyone really wants to see this character. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to give them this character in a completely different way from the way they like this character.
I mean, how do you know that, Arris? Nobody's specifically been calling for Norrin Radd's Silver Surfer in the MCU. No one asked for that. This is kind of, they can take their liberties here. This is kind of an out of nowhere D-list character that no one really knows.
And the same example goes either way, right? Because then you have some people being like, oh, you just, you're being sexist or whatever. It's like, no. Like, if I want to see Batgirl, right? I really would love to see Batgirl in a live action movie. And then DC comes out and they're like, hey, we're going to make Batgirl Batboy. No, I want Batgirl. It has nothing to do with like male or female. It's just like, if the character is male in the books, I'm going to want it male in the movie. If the character is female in the books, I'm going to want it. It's just that's why I like the character. I like Batgirl. Okay. I like Batgirl. I don't want a Batboy. I don't know.
I'm telling you, it's just, there's sadness going on here. It's just sadness.
I'm a little optimistic, and I think it's because we're not hearing about Silver Surfer being cast as a female. It's that there will be a actress that's going to portray a Herald of Galactus. At least it can go 50-50. So we may not get Norrin Radd. And I like the idea of not getting Norrin Radd first, because my favorite parts of Silver Surfer in his narrative is that he comes from Zenlaw, like a perfect utopian planet. I want to see Zenlaw. I want to see Galactus arrive to Zenlaw. I don't want to see Silver Surfer just show up to Earth like we've already seen in the past. This is one of the most introspective, damaged Marvel heroes. And I think that comes from having a character progression that's going to have to take place over the course of ideally the long term. So in the meantime, if we get an alternate Herald of Galactus, I'm all for it. And if it's Anya Taylor-Joy, I mean, I got a bias. I absolutely think she'd be perfect for anything. Hell, put
she's great.
claws on her, she could be Wolverine. I'm cool with it.
No, when you put it that way, I would agree with that for sure. Like, if that's the route they went, where she's not Silver Surfer, it's just an alternate Herald of Galactus. Well, they show, let's say, for instance, let's say they give us the origin story of Norrin Radd Silver Surfer in association with that. Mm-hmm. I'd be down with that.
So would I, but are they going to do that?
Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe. It's like angels in the outfield, baby. It could happen.
Guys.
You got to believe.
Guys, I'm tired. I am tired.
Woe and lamentation.
People who've been watching Variant and listening to the podcast for a long time know I am usually the optimist. The last half of this year, I'm like, sure. Show me.
This is fun being on this side of this, because I'm usually the one going, I don't believe you. You're full of it.
Because it's also It's because
I was ahead of you. I've come full circle now. I'm on the other end of like, you know what? We've gone as bad as we possibly can. It's only up from here.
It's also the fact that I know for a fact, because of certain reasons, that they're doing stuff on purpose behind the scenes to test the waters.
That is a fact, yes.
So
it's speculated. I can't say it's a fact.
Yeah, it's speculated. So like, with the speculation, I feel like these leaks, quote unquote leaks, are like, hey, how does fans feel about this? Because they can't afford to be losing any more money. So they can't commit to something unless they know people will show up. So I just feel like they're like, what can we get away with this? Will they let us get away with this? Will they still pay for the movie?
I'll get an outside opinion on this. I'll get your opinion specifically, Tom, on my opinion. I don't think that there's really any reason for us to believe that they're going to move away from the direction they've been going until you start seeing some changes of the guard as far as the people running the ship.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, they're in a grind of just, if it worked, try to do the thing that worked again. And whenever there's a monopoly, consumer confidence starts to be at a low. There needs to be competition. That's why we're talking about indie books on a 20% of this list, you know? Like, if you can do it with boys, there's no excuse to not be able to do it with any particular Avenger, you know?
Absolutely.
It is interesting, too, that right now, a lot of the more independent stuff, the non-DC Marvel stuff is kind of hitting a lot more right now, as far as the Invincibles, the boys, like, you know, Gen V, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's a testament to, like, the mature audience, too. You know, it's not just about kids that you got to serve. And, you know, these are big goals. You know, the goals that get so large that unless you're going to really go all in and make a something that's going to be like a cultural phenomenon, like what Barbie was, then it's going to be a tough hill to climb. Do it cheaper. You know, make the ants smaller in Ant-Man. I don't know.
Ants smaller.
So to recap the list, we got Carnage #1 Spike in the first appearance of Carnage, and pretty much any Carnage appearance with ASM 361 to kick us off. Then the Madam Web movie has spiked up her first appearance, and that's why we put ASM 210 at #4. We also have some big things happening over at Sony, depending on who you ask. Probably someone at Sony, not us or any of us, you know, at the table over there. But ASM 41, first appearance of Rhino, because of potential like Sinister Six stuff. Are they trying to save something? Is it even gonna happen? Can you see Jared Leto as Morbius again? I don't know. Probably not. I hope not. And then we have #2, which is The Boys #1. You know, they're expanding this universe, taking it international. And that gives me so much optimism, despite so much negativity as it pertains to the media coverage that have spiked so many books on our list today. And then that leaves us with #1. You know, I think one of the most anticipated superheroes to hit the screen, to accompany him, likely Galactus, one of the biggest villains that everyone's anticipating. And what Marvel's gonna do with this character, I think, is where all of this stress that Arris is, you know, holding back is coming from. It's like, we want them to take care of these characters we love. We know if it's done right, it could be huge for all of comics. Will they do it right? Oh, we'll have to wait to see, and I'll be here to report on it when we inevitably find out.
Oh,
yes.
Another solid hot 5, Tom. As always, thanks for coming on, man. We will do this again next month, guys. Keep a lookout at it'll be the first or second week. We're going to try and start making it consistently the first week of every month. Tom's going to come on and give you guys the hot 5 for each month. So other than that, we will see you in the new year, my brother.
Happy
See you
New
next year, friend.
Thanks for having me. See you next year.
All right, Tim. So now we get to expand our thoughts from last week. As we know, Bob Iger came out last week at the Deal Book Summit saying that, hey, we need to prioritize, you know, storytelling over messaging.
Credible.
Messages, as he said. So there was a lot that he said during that summit. Like, he threw the Marvels under the bus, blaming it on their producers, and basically in CEO, he's like, we didn't have enough babysitters on set. Well, that's what he said.
Let's just give the audience a little taste of what he said out of Bob Iger's own mouth. So here's a clip.
When I came back, what I've really tried to do is to return to our roots, which is, remember, we have to entertain first. It's not about messages. If you can do, again, if your story can have a positive impact, so there's that. And I've worked hard since I've been back at reminding the creative community, who are our partners, in some cases our employees, that that's the objective. And I don't really want to tolerate the opposite.
Yeah, that's his words, not ours.
His words, not ours. So that is one of the reasons why I wanted to come back to this, is because I actually, after we talked about it, because you sprung the whole thing on me last week.
I did not.
It was actually glorious in its assault. It was an incredible attack. But it gave me the chance to go and watch the entire interview, because I was like, you know what? Let me listen to everything he said. Make sure context is right here, because context matters. I believe that wholeheartedly. Context matters.
It does.
So sometimes
and it only furthered the point.
Yeah. Sometimes in the media, you know, they can cherry pick sentences and they can make it sound like you said something you did not contextually. So I wanted to give him the full benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
So I watched the full 30+ minute interview with Aaron Sorkin. And no, that's actually what he said.
Yeah.
He just said what the article said that he said. It was very cut and dry. He did talk kind of out of both sides of his mouth a little bit because on one hand, he was talking about how we need to focus more on entertainment and entertaining rather than messaging. And then in another part of the interview, he actually talked about the importance of engaging, and I do agree with him in the way that he was saying it. He was saying like when it's important, when it comes down to right and wrong, it is important to take a stand. And I agree with that. And that could mean something different for different people. Yeah. Right. And there's never going to be full agreement on anything. Like, well, some things there should be like, hey, probably shouldn't kill people. Probably. You know what I mean? Like you probably shouldn't hurt kids. Probably a good idea.
Universal truths.
Yeah. Like there are some things that you would hope that we would agree on, but there's some things that people are just going to have a different opinion on. The problem that we have now is that that's no longer acceptable.
Yeah.
By any side. Like you have two sides, neither of which thinks the other is entitled to their own opinion. And you hear the term culture war thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
And that's a real thing, unfortunately. And so, but Bob, the main issue here, and the reason I wanted to come back to it is because the things that Bob Iger said in this interview is so revisionist. Now, Arris knows the reason Arris wanted to spring this on me last week is because he knows I have been saying Bob Iger was going to do exactly this for what? How many years? Probably 2?
A while.
It's been a while. However, I did not think he was going to do it this publicly. I thought it was going to be more politician style. You know what I mean? Because like his exit, when he exited, just to be clear when that was, February of 2020.
And I'm out, everyone. The world's shutting down.
So
you're welcome for Disney Plus.
That's incredible timing. Okay. So dude exits the CEO position, stays off as chairman, but it was done in such a way where everybody thought Bob Chapek was the guy.
I mean, he was the CEO.
He was the CEO.
Yeah, he
took
over.
Bob Iger stayed on as chairman and stayed as the final check.
Are you saying he
was
the
creative for all creative endeavors?
The Geppetto to Bob Chapek's Pinocchio, if you will?
Something like that.
See, I'm using a Disney analogy for a Disney company.
Wow, so clever. So Bob was there. He was still there guiding because Bob Chapek, he did not have much of an onboarding process. He kind of got thrown into the fire, one might say, to the wolves, because he came on February 2020. We all know what happened right after that, right? March is when the lockdowns began.
What happened in 2020?
It was there was a couple of small world events.
Really?
Yeah, where, some people had to stay home for a bit.
Yeah, I was home. I don't know.
So needless to say, it was the most dangerous time for the Walt Disney Company in its history in terms of its survival.
Well, you literally had
its parks were closed.
Yeah.
No movies were being released. All their ongoing projects were suspended.
You literally had one of the worst times in global history. The world, not the country, the world shut down. And like you said, like you couldn't. There was literally a lockdown. You couldn't go to movies. The only place you were allowed to
closed. Yeah.
Only thing that wasn't closed was grocery stores and like hospitals. Like everything else was closed, right? So it's kind of like, hey, this is literally the worst time ever that any new CEO could take over. And Iger was just like, hey, Chapek, you got this.
Yeah, he was like Napoleon Dynamite's brother. Peace out. So he just kind of, Chapek got thrown into this complete hurricane of a situation, and that was the beginning of his tenure. I mean, could you imagine that? Could you imagine being, hey, you're going to become the CEO of Disney. Congratulations, man. Oh, by the way, almost everything the company does is going to be suspended for the next year. Parks are going to be closed. The Walt Disney World is going to be closed for at least the next 3 to 4 months. Good luck. Disneyland's going to be closed for a year.
This is crazy.
I mean, you're trying to navigate, because this is a global company. So you're trying to navigate your parks overseas. They're in all these different countries that have different rules and regulations of how they're handling it. Dude,
Doesn't Mickey just come in with his phantasmic little wand thing?
You would think if there was ever a time that they were going to bail him out with the Disney magic. So as the lockdowns, you go into all of the different project suspensions, right? He's got to navigate all of that. But Bob made it sound like in this interview that the problem with and the reasons that led to the underachieving of so many of these projects, Marvel, Star Wars, and otherwise over the last several years, is because there wasn't enough supervision on projects. There was too much content. And a lot of this, as he says, quote, peaked during his time away, right? But the reality is, and I went through and I double checked just to see, the reality is that almost all of the projects that have become some of their biggest problems, they were greenlit and put into production while he was there.
Yeah, of course.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Right? So, and the other thing too, and I kind of already hinted at this last week, just talking about who hired Kathleen Kennedy, Arris?
I believe that would be CEO Bob Iger.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Who extended Kathleen Kennedy's contract?
I think that was CEO of Disney, Bob Iger.
Let me just double check that here real quick. Oh, yeah, it was Bob Iger.
I was right. I knew I was right. I knew it.
Yeah, it was Bob. It would have been Bob Iger. Now,
good old Robert.
Now, he left a month later, so maybe he wasn't as involved.
But
he was there.
But maybe to Iger's credit, freaking Lucas was twisting his arm. He's like, you should really hire Kennedy.
Yeah. It was George.
You should really do it because they listened to him because that's exactly what they did with his scripts. He had an outline for his sequel, the sequel trilogy. You know what I mean? So they
obviously
they listened to him on that.
Yeah. So why wouldn't they listen to? Obviously, this is George pulling the strings behind the scenes. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but all of the problems that Star Wars has had, Lucasfilm, which is owned by Disney, I think, right?
Yes.
And that was acquired when, what's his name? Bob Iger was the CEO.
They bought the whole shebang.
So all the issues, right? If you're like the head of something, you're hired to run something for a company. And the thing you're hired to run, the division you're hired to run, it does not perform well. And it actually starts to create major financial problems for a company, right? Or major turmoil with your fan base. What typically happens with that person in that job?
I think you got to fire him.
That's usually what happens.
Yeah.
Right? Like Bob Iger was the guy. He was the one. He had multiple opportunities where he could have just, including when her contract came up. Her contract was up.
There was a lot of speculation that she was going to, because again, under her watch, you had Solo, you had
all of it.
You had the sequel trilogy, first and foremost, which was now given. Force Awakens did very well at the box office.
It did.
Did very well at the box office.
Which is what bought her a lot of goodwill.
Yes. But as you know,
Last Jedi performed well too.
Yeah, Last Jedi did. But yes, but that was like an Endgames, like a Captain Marvel Endgame scenario where they in the trailers, they were like, Luke. And then we're like, yes, for sure, Luke. But that's not the Luke I remember.
Yeah. I would compare that to it was Thor Love and Thunder is the one I would use as an example. Thor Love and Thunder made I think $800 million worldwide.
Yes.
Right?
Round roughly.
How many people are arguing that that's a good movie?
Not many.
Right.
Yeah.
But it made $800 million.
It did.
Roughly. Am I wrong on that number? I believe it's 800
It's between 700 and 800 million.
Somewhere around that number, right? So there is a reality to people are willing to give this group a benefit of the doubt. That does not mean they're going to like the film. So the box office number does not necessarily reflect whether or not the audience liked the film.
Yeah.
And I guess that's true on both sides, by the way.
It made 760 million worldwide. Love and Thunder.
So that's where the 800 number got. It was close. So, but that's true of both sides. If something doesn't make a lot of money, that doesn't necessarily mean the movie's bad.
Yeah.
If the movie makes a ton of money, it doesn't necessarily mean the movie's great.
Yes.
Right? There is reasons why it hits different things. So when we're talking about, let's say, the Marvels, and we say, like, this is a massive, massive bomb, that is not necessarily automatically a reflection of the movie itself.
Right.
Right? There's a lot to do with Marvel has now earned a lot of doubt. They have lost a lot of people because they started taking for granted and taking advantage of that goodwill in a way that has now reached a full backfire, right?
For sure. It's just people, I mean, you see it all the time in comments of, any video posted in relation to, Marvel now, where it's just, they've already lost people where they don't have faith anymore. It's like, I'm not showing up until, something.
It's kind of disturbing how much you see that comment.
Yeah. There's a lot of people even saying with these Iger comments of, him saying that we're going to change things and prioritize storytelling. And they're like, too late. I'm already out.
That's not good.
No,
that's not good.
So it's like, I mean, even if they do, if he does stick on this path and, they change things and they can get Marvel and everything back to what it was like the first 10 years, there's still going to be a certain chunk that are like, yeah, well, you already burned me. I'm done. Cause that's like that in real life anyway, right? It's it's like relationships in general. Like there's a lot of people in relationships who are not willing to give second chances. And then there's a lot of people who will be like, all right, I forgive you. But like it's 50-50,
50-50.
50-50.
Now, all this is happening under Bob Iger.
You mean he's approving all of this?
Like all of this turmoil, all of this back and forth, all of this stuff is all going on under Bob Iger. Like he is the guy. He's the guy. Even though it's all trying to be pawned off on Chapek and Kathleen Kennedy and even now Kevin Feige and all this kind of stuff. Bob Iger's the guy. Like he's the architect. He's the one that hired all of these people. He's the one who, greenlit a lot of these projects, the direction for each of these divisions and things like this. And when you look at the timelines because he's trying to pawn it off, it's like, oh, these things happened while I was away or, while someone else was CEO because he was CEO between 2020 and 2022, November of 2022. It just doesn't line up because you look at the actual movies that came out and it's movies, television shows, and all of the things that started down this rabbit hole of like, what are we even doing here? Like, what is this? And people are going like, what is this trash? I'm talking about the reduction of quality, the dramatic increase in volume of content, all of the stuff on Disney Plus. The Disney Plus platform launched under Iger.
Yeah, no, really the short of it is like he's trying to pawn all this off when it's undoubtedly he had to approve all of it.
Yeah.
Like it's just really the reality of it.
That's the thing that I want to drive home here. So when we were saying like, oh, this is Bob Iger, like, no, you have to look at like everything from Thor: Love and Thunder, that got greenlit while Iger was at Disney. That was in production while he was still the chairman of the board.
I would go one step further to that. I don't even think Bob Chapek was able to greenlight much. I don't even know what he greenlit, if he greenlit anything.
I'm sure he greenlit some things.
He was there for 11 months, which almost just a month shy of a year. So obviously that is enough time to do. But like, how much in comparison to how long has Iger been at Disney?
Well, he was the sole CEO and guy running the ship for 11 months. He was actually CEO for almost 2 years. It was about a year and 8 months.
Year and 8 months.
But Bob, the reason they're saying the 11 months is because Bob stayed there as chairman and was really overseeing all creative directions.
And that's why I'm using that 11 months because for sure, like he was guiding, all of Chapek's moves for sure. Because I imagine, you got to imagine, especially in a time like that during lockdowns, Chapek's like, hey, Bob, like, what do you think I should do, man? So it's like even the decisions he made were probably heavily influenced by Iger. So, I mean, it's like, what are we talking about here?
And that's a huge problem. And the reason I want to emphasize it is because it shows a lack of accountability. It shows that you're still dealing with people that have a humility problem, who aren't willing to just simply go, hey, yeah, we messed this up. We recognize the problems and we're going to start to adjust. It's all politics that you're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, you're that high in a company, like for sure. They're just politicians.
But do you know how much goodwill you would earn back overnight?
You would.
Overnight.
He touched on some of that in his own words. Like he was definitely said like, we were focusing on quantity over quality. We've been putting out too many sequels, and now we're going to start really looking to see if films deserve sequels and stuff like that. So like in his, business CEO way, he was kind of like, all right, maybe we were doing a little too much.
But he was everything he said, unfortunately. And this is coming from somebody who actually really likes Bob Iger.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't sound like I do, but Arris knows. I actually really like Bob Iger.
Yeah.
I think that he has been the best CEO that Disney has had since before Eisner.
Would you say since Walt, actually?
Possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, because you got to realize how much stuff this guy is responsible for as modern Disney. Now, there's pros and cons to that.
Yeah.
Some of that's not good. Some of that is turning the Walt Disney Company into this, and even more so, this global corporation that isn't necessarily serving its base, and its hands are in so many different things that even go well beyond entertainment, that I think has influenced a lot of its bad decision making.
Well, didn't he say in his memoir, like, how he was trying to solidify, like he was going after Star Wars specifically because that would like basically solidify like his tenure as far as like, wow, he did Marvel, he got Star Wars, he got Pixar. So it's like, what other CEO
building a Shanghai Disney was huge for him.
Like, what other CEO for Disney, or I would even say any other company, has accomplished that much for their company? That's insane.
Yeah, again, it's like anything.
But there's
else.
Pros and cons, like you just said.
Yeah,
that doesn't mean everything's all great.
And even some of the things that they were incredible achievements, but when you look at them, it's like, should Disney have done that? Like building a Shanghai Disney.
Yeah,
it's like the compromises that they've had to make to be able to operate a Disney inside China. Like we talked about earlier, where they covered Chadwick Boseman's face on a poster to accommodate China.
Yeah.
And their policy, because they didn't want to see a black man's face. I mean, that's crazy, dude, that they would engage in that sort of thing. That's why you saw Elon Musk in that same book summit when his now infamous quotes from it.
Dude.
Where he said,
quotes from a billionaire.
Yeah, I'm interested in the reality of virtue, not people going around saying good things, while doing evil. That's kind of what he was referring to. And again, I'm not saying I'm an Elon Musk fan. I'm just saying that's true. Like you got to have a level of accountability and consistency. And one of the big things that are ticking people off about companies like Disney is that they say virtuous things, but that they do things like accommodate whether or not the Chinese government wants to see a black man's face on a poster.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
That's insane. That's racism.
But it's also like at the same time saying, they say they're doing all this stuff, and the minute it stops making the money, then they're like, whoa, wait. You know what I mean?
No,
so it's like,
wild.
you're just trying to chase the dollar, really. You don't really care about people's feelings. You care what makes you money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what I was referring to when I said, they became very focused on expanding the globalization of the company, and by diversifying into so many different industries, and it really kind of made it to where it was so much about money and just turning a profit even more than it already was, that it's in a lot of ways, again, you got to take the pros with the cons, or vice versa. In this case, it's as its time has gone on, it's pulled the Disney company further and further away from its roots, which is what a lot of fans are feeling now.
But Iger said he's going to get back to the roots.
But do we believe him?
Yeah, I don't know.
But let me ask you this. Do you think he's actually going to follow through on what he said?
I think he might be forced to. I think if he does, it's not going to be genuine. I think that the dollar is speaking, and he will be forced to do whatever the dollar demands. So, if they still got a lot of stuff already in the slate, already in the barrel, so to speak, that's already been shot, ready production, you can't redo it. So I think as this starts to release, as we go into 2024, and they continue to see a downward trend, which is why it seems like for Marvel specifically, they're taking the year off. We're only getting Deadpool 3 next year because that's like a guaranteed. They know that's going to make money. Everyone loves Ryan Reynolds. Everyone loves his version of Deadpool and Hugh Jackman. That's like a no-brainer. So they're like, okay, we'll keep that. And then they're reassessing everything else and just observing. I think 2024 going into 2025 is going to be a crucial for Disney, because depending how things continue to perform or not perform is going to be the deciding factor on what he's going to make the company do going forward. But we also know the shareholders are leaning heavily on him too, because the shareholders are the real reason. They could vote him out if they wanted to. And we've already know they were like, hey man, revenue is dipping. This is the first time we haven't had $1 billion movie since 2014. What's going on, Mr. CEO, man?
Mm-hmm.
So I think he might be forced to. It's not going to necessarily be genuine, but as of now, the dollar's speaking. And if that continues into 2024, he's going to have to do something, which is why he's coming out saying this. And they're taking off, at least on the Marvel side for next year, to kind of be like, all right, we need to assess how we're going to go with this moving forward.
I agree with most of that. I think that my only caveat would be that, like I've said many times before, I think that this company is so run by people with very specific worldviews, and many of them are activists to that end, that Bob Iger is going to have a really, really tough time.
Even if the shareholders are pushed, because that's, again, you
can have even shareholders applying pressure to anyone they put in those positions. They've kind of put themselves in a corner because throughout the entirety of the Disney company, you have a lot of people that are activist minded, and they are openly. I mean, for instance, that one executive, I can't remember what her exact title was, where they, the inside that Disney phone call, Zoom call or whatever that got leaked. And she was talking about like her agenda was to push very specific things within Disney content. And I'll leave that to all of you to go look up if you so choose. But whether you agree or you disagree, again, that is a very specific mindset.
Well, there was also a call that leaked, because you just jogged my memory. Remember when Iger was on a phone call with all his studio heads, with Pixar, Feige from Marvel.
That was after the fallout of Last Jedi.
Kathleen Kennedy and stuff, all the, the heads for their individual studios. And he was basically like, what the hell? This cannot happen again. And he was essentially yelling at all of them, Kathleen Kennedy, Feige, the head of Pixar, and be like, everyone take note. We cannot make this. So whatever you got to do to make sure we don't lose money like this again, do it. So
yeah, but what happened after that?
Yeah, it's true. But I
like the results it only got worse. And that's my point. That's the point that I'm trying to get to.
But my thing is that
I think they're stuck.
But at this point, if you have, because let's say like, he doesn't, right? But the shareholders are like, you're not doing it, you're out. They get someone else, right? And now they got someone else. But then they apply that same pressure to the new CEO, and then the CEO can't do it. So like, how many CEOs are going to have to go through before the shareholders are like, look, we're just going to keep voting out until you do what we say.
Well, it's not a matter. That's my point though. It's not a matter of whether the CEO is willing to accommodate what the direction that the shareholders and even the general audience wants. The company it's put itself in a corner where it's kind of become a bubble where everyone that works there is of the same mindset. That's why you're seeing a lot of creative like dead space. But where it's just the same ideas and even ideological ideas being churned out left and right, left and right, left and right. And everybody's like, why does everything feel like the same rehashed garbage? It's almost like there's no creativity left. And I think it's because possibly this is what it seems like. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like they've created like an internal bubble where almost everyone in every major important position of decision making and creativity, minus a few people, are like they're thinking the same. They're just used to the same thing. They have to flush the system.
I was gonna say, do you not think though at a certain point, because being that high, Iger's level, any of those executive CEO levels, it's very cutthroat. Do you not think it would come to a certain point? It's like, look, it's either my job or your job. So if someone like Iger is feeling the pressure where he's like, I might lose my freaking position, where at that point he'd be like, all right, you're fired, clean house, Kathleen Kennedy, you're out. All right, you're out.
I don't think they're going to fire Kathleen Kennedy. Her contract is up in 2024.
I'm just using her as an example, but like someone like they won't either when her contract's up, they won't renew, or whoever it may be.
Yeah,
I'm just using because everyone knows Kathleen Kennedy.
That's how I think you'll know. So like I said that before. That's how I think you'll know if they're serious. If they start parting ways with people, if you start seeing positions getting swapped out and they bring in fresh blood, some fresh ideas, some fresh thinking. some people that really understand, like on the Disney side, like the Disney animation side, some people that really understand like what made Disney the most trusted family entertainment brand in the world for a century.
Well, I'm very curious to see, because like at the end of the day, it always comes down to the money. So there's going to be a breaking point, whether Disney wants to stay on this route, you know, for whatever reason, and then they're like now in massive amounts of debt and they have to sell or something like that, or they're going to just be like,
I agree with that part for sure.
Or they're just going to have to make the change, because there's really only two options.
Right.
You could potentially keep losing money until you're in a position like Warner Brothers where you have to be bought out and something like that. Or you make the changes and hopefully the revenue starts going back up. Those are literally your only two options.
Yeah.
So it's like, where is it going to go? But on the twist of that, with Iger throwing all his creatives, executives, and producers under the bus, you have one of the co-directors of the Spider-Verse films, the Sony Into the Spider-Verse films, coming out being like, hey, listen, guy, no, that's not how these things work. And basically saying you should know more than most, that like none of this stuff happens without coming across your desk.
Exactly right.
Meaning you, like, again, co-director of the Into the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse films, straight out like calling out Iger, be like, you can't blame us directors, writers, producers, and stuff like that, because you have to approve everything we do. You see all the cuts, you see all the scripts. You literally have to put your stamp of approval before it goes out, which is very true. So it's kind of funny that, like, not funny, it's just kind of interesting that now we may have the people who are making the films for his company that he's the CEO of, turning against him. So like, could it potentially get to a point where they're like, if this guy's going to throw us under the bus, we're not going to really work for him? But it's like twofold, right? Because at the same time, it is Disney and everyone would give their left arm to do something for Disney. So maybe it's the fear factor where he's doing this because it's like, I'm Bob Iger, this is Disney. What are you going to say? That you're just never going to work for Disney again. And I have Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar, like that's like half of Hollywood right there. So it's this twofold, but like anything, you're going to have the people like the director from Into the Spider-Verse not keeping his mouth shut, being very vocal. And then you will also have the people who are like, I really do want to make a Marvel movie, so I won't say nothing. Like, so it's like, what's going to be the tipping point?
My feeling on it is, it's like, because I had already kind of mentioned a little bit of it. I think that you will start to see maybe some symbolic fires.
Right.
I just don't think that Disney as a brand, I think Disney's got a long way to go before they can recover, because they have to purge the entire system. You can't get to this place where you're putting out, you've got this much content coming out, this many different things going on within a company that has polarized so much of your base, and expect that to change quickly with just, because you can't fire everyone simultaneously. You can't run a company. Like, what are you going to do? Shut the company down for 2 years while you rebuild? You can't do that. The company has to keep running. That means you have to have people in key positions. You can't just replace everybody overnight. That's going to take a lot of time. And he's already talking about moving on from fixing. He just did right after that, the book summit interview that he did with the New York Times. He went on to another in town, like a town hall with him for Disney employees. It was like the next day or 2 days later or whatever. And he was already talking about how 2023 was a fixing period and he's looking forward to getting into like a building phase in 2024. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, what got fixed? And I know that they've made some adjustment, but most of that has been on cost cutting, getting rid of content. They're still analyzing, possibly selling off pieces of the company, things like that. But at the same time, it's like most of the things, that's why I asked you, do you believe him? Because here's what I think they're going to do. Because I just don't think that I think Bob Iger is smart enough to know that at least in his short remaining tenure, because he says he's out 2026, he's out. That's 2 years.
He said this like before though.
But he's also in his 70s.
Yeah, he's 72, I believe.
Yeah, he's in his 70s.
He does look good for 72.
No, that guy, he's like in shape, man.
Yeah,
that guy takes care of himself.
He's freaking eating
he's
baby
a sharp
fetuses.
Guy.
That's what's going on.
What the
that's like freaking vampiric
image.
up in here, man.
Vampire,
Yeah.
But I think that he is going to figure out what is the least amount of adjustment necessary to get back at least a sustainable portion of our fan base that we've lost.
Well, okay, answering that question more direct, I think he's going to do whatever is going to save his image in the spotlight, in the public eye.
The best that he can.
That's what he's going to do. Whatever is going to make him look the best before he exits, it's going to do that. So at this particular junction, if you will, that would be trying to, listen to what the fans want and give us, the characters and stories we want without deviating and doing whatever, they do.
And that's not to say that Bob Iger doesn't care about the company or the people that work for him. I don't believe that. Just from listening to him, I've listened to him for many years. I've listened to his masterclass. I read his book. Like, you can tell this guy genuinely loves the people that work for him, and he wants to see the company do well. He wants to leave Disney in a really good position.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he loves being the CEO of Disney also. Yeah. The problem is like so many people that after sometimes you just overstay.
Michael Jordan
is a good example.
Yeah, he could have gone out on a high, but he decided to come back.
Some of the greats, you stay too long.
Brady.
You start, buying your own stuff.
Tom Brady. Yeah. He's still a great quarterback, but
I don't know if you can say Tom Brady.
He's still a great quarterback.
He was playing at a high level when he retired still.
He's still a great quarterback, but he is never he's never going out on like the way he could have. He
should have retired when he won the Super Bowl.
Exactly. He literally could have
stayed one season too long.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. He stayed too long. Like, you could have gone out peak, literally top of the mountain, and you're like, do another year, and now you're going out not a Super Bowl champion.
Yeah, mistakes have been made. Yeah. But it's also Tom Brady, so I don't know that you can ever go out like at not high.
You know what I mean.
But again, Kathleen Kennedy's contract expires in 2024. So they're not going to fire her. She's going to be, and supposedly the rumor is she's not going to be seeking renewal. That's going to be a key one to watch, my people, because if they renew her contract anyway, and you don't see a change of the guard, because that's what I'm wondering. Kathleen Kennedy's contract is up in 2024. Have they been lining Filoni up to take the big job?
He just got a promotion.
You're right. He's been promoted twice now. So are they lining him up and moving him up the chain? So he's just next in line. So as soon as her contract is up, he moves into the big chair. If that happens, they're making some moves. If that
could you imagine if they name him like president of Lucasfilm?
That would be a very good sign.
But what a story for Filoni himself.
Oh, totally.
Like working on Avatar and stuff at Nickelodeon, getting a call from Lucasfilm, then developing Clone Wars with George Lucas, essentially being his Padawan for years, and now, going into live action with Favreau and all that stuff and getting his first Star Wars film, then to have, be chief creative officer and then president of that's just like, what a Cinderella story.
Yeah. And he would probably be the first president of a corporation like that to direct his own Star Wars film.
Oh my God, yeah.
Well, no, George Lucas. What am I talking about?
Oh, yeah.
George Lucas did it. Never mind.
And he's the creator.
Yeah. So, but if you do see that happen, I think that's a good sign. It's a sign that they're actually moving quietly in the right direction.
But isn't Kathleen, she's older too, right? She's 60s, 70s?
I don't know how old Kathleen Kennedy is. She's
definitely in her 60s.
She's getting up there.
Because she's
been in the game a long time.
She's been in the game a long time.
She's 70.
She's 70. See, okay.
70.
Boom. She's 70. She's only 2 years younger than Okay, so you would think it makes sense. She's had an amazing career. She's basically produced every Steven Spielberg film.
Even her run as president of Lucasfilm, she's produced multiple billion-dollar films.
Yeah, but I would argue that that's just because
it's just her career is heavily tainted by the overall things that I would say half the things that she inserted into the Star Wars universe.
You could argue
under the guidance of the Walt Disney Company.
You could argue though,
that was held by Bob Iger.
These IPs essentially sell themselves. Like at this point, it's not so much. Like you could have almost given Star Wars to anyone, and it still would have done gang because it's Star Wars. You don't really have to do much to sell it.
Well, I don't know if I go that far. You do have to have skill.
You do.
You have to have the skill set.
Like think about it.
Because that's a huge job, dude.
It is, but think about it. Like I'm talking about when they're bringing it back with Force Awakens. Like almost any, I imagine, head bringing back Star Wars after 2 decades, people are showing up no matter what just to see. Just to freak. It's Star Wars.
Yeah, but you still have to have the foresight to hire the right director, the right writers.
True.
You have to be able to greenlight the right story. And I think that was one of the smartest things that they did with The Force Awakens was they greenlit the first story because it was
a new
some
hope.
really annoying moments in that movie, like what they did with Han Solo. But there was enough nostalgia in there. It was enough practical elements, just kisses of the past for Star Wars, of the original stuff. Because Abrams, they hired a true Star Wars fan to make the film and a very competent director. So she was smart enough to know this has to be done right. Even if everybody doesn't like every bit of the story elements, this needs to be done with great care. So she was definitely, she worked with Steven Spielberg for years. So she is a very smart and competent filmmaker.
Yeah.
So she is, man.
She is. It's just the Star Wars stuff
there
is
is
me
no
so much.
getting around. This is an incredibly talented and competent lady. Like she knows what she's doing.
But like that doesn't mean it's just like anything. Like being a competent director or a very capable actor doesn't mean you should direct this movie or play that character per se.
I think that Star Wars is right in her wheelhouse. The problem with Star Wars, all the problems that people have with Star Wars lead back to ideological differences. That's the thing that nobody likes to talk about. That's just the reality of it. That leads back to ideological differences. And you just polarized half your base with some of the nonsense that you inserted.
But that's what I'm saying. If you would have chose someone else, they may not have gone that route.
For sure. But again, that's Bob Iger's job. Bob Iger
he could have been like,
yes,
nay. Yes.
He could have just walked in and said, I get it. But if you want to inject this into the messaging, even the stuff that's like legit, like, hey, let's have more female Jedis. Awesome.
Yeah.
But let's not be soapboxy.
Right.
Let's not do things that go outside of, Star Wars mythology. Let's not do things that don't give characters enough time to actually earn what they show on screen. Let's not get out over our skis. Let's make sure this is done well. And keep, let's say, George Lucas in the loop. I know, okay, let's see what George says. You know what I'm saying? That should have been Bob Iger's role.
That's the weirdest thing to me, that like the dude freaking had the outline and gave it to them. Was like, hey, here's the outline. It was there. Why would you?
They could have still told a different story and just simply if they would have just done certain things differently, it could have been this whole madness could have been so different.
That's the crap that annoys me with a lot of these big studios. It's not just Disney. Disney gets the brunt of it because they own so much IP.
Yeah.
They own Marvel. They own Star Wars.
Yeah,
they own Fox now.
sure.
Like they own legitimately. I'm not even being facetious. They own like half of all the major IPs in Hollywood. Like it's crazy. Like the Alien franchise. Like it's freaking crazy. They own like everything, right? So they get the brunt of it because they own so much, so everything goes back to them. But like, I just don't understand. Again, this is like me beating a dead horse, but it's because it keeps coming up with, all these IPs and films, like how you would take something that someone has loved. So let's use Alien, right? Ripley. Awesome, right?
Yeah.
Freaking one of the coolest, most badass, not even just female characters, just characters in blockbuster history,
sure.
right? Like everyone unanimously is like, yeah, Ripley's awesome.
One of the greatest sci-fi movies of all time.
Right? And it was one of those things where like they just let her be cool. She was just cool, right?
Yeah.
As a character, she was just cool. But also like, if you were to redo, you wanted to bring her back and stuff like that, how pissed would you be if like they changed Ripley completely when they were like to reboot an older version of her? You're like, that's not Ripley. What did you do? It's like, it goes back to what I believe I said earlier. It's you take these characters, you're adapting these characters, whether it's Silver Surfer, Batman, whoever, that are loved for particular reasons, and you're using the fame of them to get butts in the seats, but then you're giving us something that's not the character we like. Like it's just weird. It's just mind-boggling to me that the only reason these movies are even made, specifically comic books, is because the comic books are successful. Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, whoever have been like a part of Americana and pop culture for so long. They're embedded into the DNA of like, again, pop culture. And you take that, you use that, knowing that we love it. You're like, oh, they love this character. And then you give us something that's not that. That doesn't make any sense. It's like the reason we like this character is because it's been that character. So you're literally just bait and switching.
Yeah.
And it's like, I get it, but are you telling me you're not smart enough to make a character that will get an original character that will get us into the seats to do that thing you want to do, you have to use Spider-Man or someone else. Like they're using it as like a cheat code. They're like, you put Spider-Man on it, we'll show up.
It's not just that. And it's why I keep going back to the ideological part it's that you're dealing with people that think clearly that in order to correct past wrongs, you have to destroy the past. You have to subvert it. You have to completely take it over and make it into what you think it should have been. Mm-hmm. Instead of doing something new and building on what came before, right? And so that's like, for instance, we'll go back to Star Wars. With Star Wars, what did you see? You see them revert Han Solo back to his very begin state, where he was just kind of this rogue wandering around the galaxy. He was back to his kind of mercenary business. You know, he was a deadbeat dad, and he just dies at the hand of his own son, right? Luke Skywalker totally loses just forfeits everything that he earned over the course of his entire arc prior to that, throwing his lightsaber over his shoulder and calling it a laser sword. You know, total disgruntled old man hibernating on an island while the world falls apart, right? All this kind of stuff. And people notice these things. Like, why would you do that to that character so that you can replace him with this character over here? Same thing with Marvel. What is everybody complaining about? They're complaining about all the swapping of the characters and changing them entirely, like you're talking about. And all that it's that they're, instead of building on what came before them, they're usurping it. They're just confiscating it, and they're injecting whatever they think it should have been from the beginning into it. Well, that's never going to work, at least not with the existing fan base. That's never going to work. You have to force that on a new generation.
You'll have to wait it out for it.
Yeah.
It's kind of the prequel thing with Star Wars, where
very much so.
A lot of people, the prequels were hated for a long time. But now the 10-year-olds that have seen the films when they were kids are now 30, 40-year-olds. Yep. So now it's like really loved because now we're the adults. Yep. So, I mean, another 10, 20 years, that could be true.
Well, the other problem is that you're also coupling that now with poor managerial, efforts and bad special effects and not well-written stories in general, and all kinds of plot gaps.
I also do think there is a sense of fatigue at the same time too, because I mean, like,
that's definitely
even if the movies, even if they stayed on pace with Endgame and stuff, like, you do have to kind of, after 10 years, whatever, 12 years, you kind of have to do something different. You can't just keep pumping out the same things over and over. So it's like, it is, I mean, because then you'll have the people arguing. It's like, well, they're also not making money because no one could afford to go to the theater. It's like, yeah, that's probably a little bit, but it's a little bit of everything though. Right. It's not just one thing.
No, I think there are 2 or 3 big ones that are the majority of it. And then you have some smaller factors that also play a role, but they're smaller.
Because it's like, if a movie is good, people will show up, because this year was
Mario, Barbie,
Oppenheimer, like Puss in Boots did really, really well. There's a bunch of films that did really, really well this year. Most of those I just mentioned actually did $1 billion. Mm-hmm. So it's like, it's not that, it's just Marvel and Star Wars can't just ride the wave anymore of like, we're Marvel, we're Star Wars. Remember, like, we do good things. Absolutely. It's like they have to now actually prove they're pumping out quality films, because for a long time they had a lot of like goodwill, because specifically Marvel, because of like the first 10 years, but now the last 2-3 years with phase 4 and we're currently in 5, that's been fading, as it's been like lackluster after lackluster after lackluster. So I think Disney was very used to like, oh, we can just do it's the MCU, of course everyone's going to show up for a Marvel movie, and they realized this year that's not the case anymore.
No, and that's true of the entire Disney company at this point.
Yeah, so
every single one of their brands.
Which is why Iger's also announced this past week or two Frozen 3 and 4. So people will watch Frozen, right? Frozen, they'll show up.
That was actually one of the more interesting things that he commented, because the interviewer Sorkin asked him about the sequels. Yeah, because he read a quote from Walt Disney, and where Walt Disney said, "We don't do sequels here." And he explains, and he goes, here, I'll play the clip for you.
He said, many people have asked, why don't you make another Mary Poppins? Well, by nature, I'm a born experimenter. To this day, I don't believe in sequels. I can't follow popular cycles. I have to move on to new things. There are many new worlds to conquer. As a matter of fact, people have been asking us to make sequels ever since Mickey Mouse first became a star. We have bowed only on one occasion to the cry to repeat ourselves. Back in the 30s, the Three Little Pigs was an enormous hit, and the cry went out, give us more pigs. I could not see how we could possibly top Pigs with Pigs. But we tried, and I doubt whether any one of you reading this can name the other cartoons in which the pigs appeared. We didn't make the same mistake with Snow White. When it was a huge hit, the shout went up for more dwarfs. Top dwarfs, why try? Right now, we're not thinking about making another Mary Poppins. We never will. Perhaps there'll be other ventures with equal critical and financial success, but we know we cannot hit a home run with the bases loaded every time we go to the plate. We also know the only way we can even get to first base is by constantly going to bat and continuing to swing. What would Walt think now?
I'm going to talk to him later. Maybe I'll let you know. I don't.
So just listening to Walt Disney's words, like, especially like in that setting where he's forced to sit there and listen to Walt Disney say, like, yeah, we're always moving forward. We don't do sequels because that's how you innovate. Yeah. And him saying, well, yeah, I often reflect on that. Meanwhile, it's like Toy Story 5, Frozen 3.
We need to make that money,
and
honey.
Just like all these sequels. And, it's interesting to hear him have to answer that because some of the most successful things that they've had in the last 10 years on the Disney side, they've all been sequels and remakes. Yeah. Even like the Beauty and the Beast, all the live action remakes of the classics, right?
Well, we're remaking all the classics live action right now.
And even that's starting to fall apart for them. For a lot of the same reasons, just poor quality, ideological inserts, and all kinds of stuff to where they're changing characters in ways that just go against what the original story was. But it's like, again, you can do that. It's your company to run at this point. You can do that. But when things start to go awry, if you then are going to come out and say, hey, we recognize we went in the wrong direction, then fully own that. Fully take, and I'm nobody to be giving Bob Iger advice.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not even going to pretend like I can do that. But I hope as a lifelong Disney fan, and that encompasses all of their brands, right? I just hope that they can find themselves in a place of doing some real self-reflection and some humility and just go, hey, yeah, we went too far. Not everybody's going to agree on whatever. And we are certainly allowed to create what we want to create. But we also recognize that we're also looking to entertain an audience. And we're going to make some adjustments so that everybody can feel like these things it's universal. It's for everyone.
So let's wait and see.
I don't know. I hope. I want to hope. You're actually, I think, becoming less optimistic than I am. I've gone full circle, like I said earlier, to where I'm like, maybe we'll see it, but I will say I don't think it's going to be for a while. I think Disney's got probably at least 5 years or more of rebuilding to do.
I'm sticking to the money is going to always be where the decisions are made.
Even if they make the right decisions, I think they've got years to rebuild.
I mean, yeah, again, they have so much in motion. Like, I don't think we'll start seeing changes till 2025, 2026 if they start now. Because, again, there's so much. A company like Disney doesn't start making a movie the year of. They have stuff in the works years in advance. So
they've already pushed everything out to 2025 and beyond.
That's what I'm saying.
Deadpool, so
I'm very curious.
Movies-wise.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see what we'll get next year from them across the board. Because Marvel, we know, is, we're only getting Deadpool 3, but like, we were getting 5 Star Wars shows. Now we're getting 4. It was they just announced apparently that Andor season 2 is going to be pushed to 2025, which I found that very curious. I'm like, for why? So it looks like they really are kind of assessing, because Andor was widely received or regarded as one of the best things Star Wars has done in a long time. So it was like, why that one though? Like, everyone loved that. So very, very curious to see where Disney goes and if they go to infinity and beyond, Tim.
We'll find out. All I know is, Arris, like Agatha, it was Iger all along.
It was Agatha. Isn't that coming out next year?
Next year.
That is next year.
The series that has changed names 3 times. It's now Darkhold Diaries.
Yeah.
Agatha, Darkhold Diaries.
We got clips of that and leaks are coming out on that.
It was, behind the scenes look. And
Audrey.
We'll see.
What's her name? Aubrey Day.
I can't
Audrey
remember
Plaza.
her name. No.
Audrey-
Oh yeah.
Audrey
Plaza. Yeah.
She's apparently going to be playing
That was an interesting
Agatha's
pick.
ex in the film,
That
in the
was-
show.
That was an interesting choice.
Plaza?
Yeah.
I like her. I think she's good. No?
She can be funny, but as
I
far
think
from an
I like
acting
her.
perspective, I just have a hard time.
She's like quirky and
maybe
weird.
she'll
but
be
that's-
surprise me, but I have a hard time picturing her in that type of a role.
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
mean, I'm a fan of hers. I think she's pretty good. So I'm curious. It's just, it's interesting that they're doing an Agatha show in general because it's like out of all the Marvel characters you could have done, you chose to give Agatha a solo series. I mean, it could be good. I mean, I'll give them the benefit.
I'm
of
going
the
to go
doubt.
ahead and make a prediction.
I'll give them the benefit. I'll be the optimist here.
It's neither going to be good nor well received. That's my prediction, and I hope it surprises me.
Yeah, it could go either way. But with that, guys, that brings today's podcast to a close.
It does. We are getting close to Christmas. And hey, for all of you guys that are aware of our whatnot, we are doing a huge Christmas giveaway.
Huge.
Coming up on the 14th at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We are going to be giving away everything from comics to collectible pieces. And we are also giving away some video games and a PS5.
We're doing it at 5? We're doing it late in the day, huh?
Yeah, we are. So that way people are off work.
Depending
So
where you. Depending
it's for you.
No.
For people.
What if you're West Coast? Then you're still at work.
I can't help you.
All right.
I'm not doing a live show at 7.
That's messed up.
Well, I got
They
kids.
would have preferred for us to go, earlier during their lunch break,
Their lunch break.
Anyway,
So watch for the giveaway.
with that said, we'll see you guys next time when we talk about all things comics.